Namaskar. Hello and welcome to 𝗣𝗂𝘁𝙗𝑆 channel. I'm your host, Sree Iyer. Joining me today is Utsav Chakrabarti from Washington, DC. And we're going to be talking about two things. One is, where does the Russia-Ukraine war stand? What is the funding that is being going in from United States and NATO countries? As well as, was Victoria Nuland asked to go, or did she retire? Both these things will be addressed. And if she was asked to go, what was the reason given? So let's welcome Utsav Chakrabarti. Utsav, namaskar and welcome to 𝗣𝗂𝘁𝙗𝑆 channel.
Namaste, Sree, and happy to be back.
So, Utsav, rid us this puzzle. 2 years now, and the Russia-Ukraine war shows no end. And people keep saying that we won this. And again, bridges are broken, cables are broken, even oil pipelines are blasted. What exactly is going on now? Who is winning and who is losing?
That's a very good question and depends on whose objectives and what objectives you want to consider as victory. When the war started, the Russians had a set of objectives they had in mind, and the Westerners had a different set of objectives they had in mind on what constitutes victory. But I don't think either side thought that this war would go that far or lead to this level of utter destruction and bloodshed. This is one of the probably the bloodiest conflict that we are seeing in literally after World War II, after Vietnam War. And it is going to continue, in my opinion, because what you see is that both sides have set their foots on the ground. And there are immense number of, literally every day, between 600 to 800 people are dying every day. And on either side, both sides. And Russia has lost tremendous amount of people and resources. And America obviously is not directly fighting there. In fact, there are probably a couple of thousand American losses too, even though it's not officially part of the war. Physical losses, like people actually dying. And of course, this is the most expensive project that America has ever been involved in. I think America has by far outspent in foreign aid any other project that it has ever supported in its entire history. Any other project, including Marshall Plan and World War II. It's just humongous at the amount of money America has poured into this region in the last 10 years. So again, your question is very complicated depending on who you ask and what their objectives were. But if I were to predict a trajectory of victory, then I would say that Russia at this point of time has recovered from the objectives with which America and the Western countries and the NATO countries and Ukraine itself had gone into the war with. And those objectives have not been fully achieved from the Western point of view and Ukraine's point of view. And Russia is on a trajectory towards gaining victory, albeit at immense losses, like a generational level of losses for itself.
Thank you, Utsav. This infographic here, talk to us a little bit, because it might be a little difficult for people to pick it up. If you can read it, or I'll try to zoom in a little bit more. Go ahead.
So this is from the CFR, which is one of the main government organizations, think tanks in Washington DC that is close to the U.S. government and is often considered as a public arm of the state, the deep state. Many people call it deep state. And here you can see that 2% of the assistance that was sent to Ukraine by the United States between the time the war started up to January 15th this year, so it doesn't include anything that has been sent in the last couple of months, was about 2% of it was humanitarian assistance. And about 35% was civilian financial assistance. And the rest was all military assistance. Similarly, if you look at the amount of support that had gone in from the global community to Ukraine, you can see that from the United States, the red is what the military, the orange-brown is the military support. And the US has been the second highest donor and the highest individual donor as a country to Ukraine by far. And majority of it is military aid. all the other countries, EU institutions and all, the EU institutions have given more aid, especially to help Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't have any economy, so they are basically just pumping money there to keep the country going. They have the other amount, 90 plus billion, and this is the official government figures. I'm giving you these figures because this is what America would admit to publicly. Obviously, there is a much bigger amount that people will say, some would say double of it, that has gone in that people don't admit to. So this is the world's biggest finance effort in the history, that what has been going on in Ukraine for the last 10 years.
Utsav, yeah, go ahead. Please finish your thought. I thought you were done.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
here it's a good comparison of what the US has supported to other allies. Notably, here you can see Pakistan in 1962 was heavily funded by the Western countries, and you can see that Ukraine doubles in terms of the amount of money that has been poured in. So everything else combined probably is or slightly greater than Ukraine, but this is a good chart for our people to understand the amount of resources that have been poured into Ukraine by US. Please go on.
So when the United States gives funding towards the military of a country, that money finds its way right back into the United States because it is done with an intent to supply them with weapons which only the United States manufactures. So this is like a round tripping here where the armament manufacturers in US benefit hugely, but the country that gets them, gets deeper and deeper into debt. Is Ukraine now at a position where it has no choice but to just keep gulping this? Or does Ukraine have choices? Like, for example, let's say India has something that is 80% as effective as what a US weaponry can provide, but India's product is 10 times cheaper. Do you think Ukraine might then decide to buy it from India? Because there is no money that Ukraine has right now, isn't it?
Well, Ukraine has been a fully dependent state on NATO and America for a really long time now. It's not now. It has been that way for the last, I would say, 7 or 8 years. Probably in the first couple of years of Ukraine's post-Ukraine quote-unquote revolution, or Maidan revolution, as the media calls it. People obviously pro-Russian thought process. It was a military coup, and the truth probably was in somewhere in between. Ukraine has been dependent completely on the Western funding for the last 8 years. But at this point of time, Ukraine, I don't think, has the ability to even decide what it wants to do or what it should do at any level of leadership, neither at the military level of leadership nor at the civilian leadership that Zelensky represents publicly. It is fully and completely managed from outside. You are absolutely right. In fact, if you see public statements by our senators, the top senators that have been on the side of supporting Ukraine for the last many years, Lindsey Graham, on the Democrat side, John Kerry, they have publicly stated that this is about restarting American armament industry, NATO armament industry. Most of the money that has been going into the Ukrainian conflict in the form of military aid eventually is the money that comes back to America to restart its armament industry, which means people get jobs. It has come back to American politics also, I must say, because a lot of this money goes back to lobbying firms who in turn fund the members of Congress and the Senate. And so this there is a recycling going on. In fact, some people would go on and say that the reason why the American economy is doing better than what it was expected to do over the last 2 years, and even though there is very high cost of living that has gone up tremendously and there is high inflation, the overall economy is doing relatively better and hasn't gone down further. That is because of this restarting and recycling of immense amount of resources back into our country during this Ukraine war. So there are many sides of this argument, and but one thing that is very clear is that the money does come back, and this has been publicly admitted by most people who are in positions of decision making.
Thank you, Utsav. Before we go to the second topic, which is that of Victoria Nuland, I have one follow-up question. Viewers, if you have not already liked this video, I request you to do like this video. And if you have not subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe to our channel. I'd like Utsav to be a regular on our channel and come once every 2 weeks. He has very kindly consented, but you need to give him a lot of likes. And also you can show your appreciation, questions, anything that you want to know from Utsav, you can send by way of questions in the comment section. So Utsav, one of the turning points, it is said, of this campaign for Russia is that they were taking heavy beating from the HIMARS equipment that Ukraine had with them. Now, so there are two phases in this whole ammunition stuff. First of all, United States got rid of all the older ammunitions by giving it to Ukraine. Once that was over, then they slowly bringing them up, to with newer version of the armaments. And it is noticed that HIMARS, HIMARS, which was supposed to be something that could bring down any aircraft, Russian aircraft, a Russian hacker figured out a way to confuse the heck out of HIMARS. And once they successfully did that, the HIMARS ceased to be a weapon for Ukraine. How true is this?
So HIMARS is actually precision guided rocket launching of different calibers. It's a modular system for people here who are more familiar with the military terms. It's a modular system where you can replace one type of rocket launching, mobile rocket launching on the back of trucks, that you have seen on TV channels, things going out in multiple barrel rocket launching. And it is modular and it is precision guided. It is guided by satellite data, GPS data. So you can be precise in where that rocket falls. And you can change the range of the rocket depending on which rocket you fit into that system, because it is modular. You can replace one with another. It is not directly always aimed at fighters or flying aircrafts. It is more of a ground level attrition, wherever you want to target a battalion of forces that are hiding in some forested area, you target it with a GPS guided HIMARS. And that is what been going on from the Ukrainian side. Lot of Russian soldiers have been killed 20 or 30 miles behind the line of contact through HIMARS. And Russia, for a really long period of time, was unable to detect them. And when they were able to detect them, they were sometimes able to save themselves using short-range anti-aircraft systems, because the precision-guided missile has a trajectory. So you kind of figure out once it's fired, how long it will take and where it will fall. So you kind of use short-range Strela system or 𝗣𝗚𝘂𝗿, which are both Russian systems that try to shoot them down. But Russia has taken tremendous amounts, in the hundreds of thousands, its soldiers have died, many through HIMARS. What Russia has now developed actually is a Tornado-S system, which is a response to HIMARS, has a longer range and has a more intensity. So each of its rockets can carry more amount of explosive. So at least in the last couple of months, what you see is that whenever HIMARS are being fired, they're getting reverse HIMARS or counter battery fire from the Russian side using Tornado-S or other kind of precision weapon. They have another precision shell which is fired from cannons called Krasnopol, which uses a GPS system as well. And they use that to target the HIMARS, and the HIMARS, before they are able to run away, are getting destroyed. So this is a cat and mouse game that is going on. And one of the reasons many experts are saying that Russia has recovered from the initial setbacks of the conflict and is doing very well right now is not only its ability to outproduce Western NATO countries. I mean, they are outproducing Ukraine from the beginning of this conflict. So Ukraine is not the only one fighting there. They're outproducing NATO not just in quantity, but also in quality of products that they are making. And that is a big surprise to many people in the West. They didn't expect Russians to be able to respond. So, it's a cat and mouse game. It's a sad cat and mouse game that is going on in the world, but that's the reality.
So when did Ukraine stop manufacturing its food grains, like all the agricultural stuff?
So one of the problems is that much of the area that is in conflict right now, a lot of it is farmland. And so now you cannot even go and farm there, because either there are mines, which is on the line of contact. If you go 20, 30 miles behind the line of contact, there are tremendous intensity of landmines. You saw that from both sides. When Russians were going into 𝗣𝗬𝘂𝗍, they fell into landmine traps. And similarly, when Ukraine was coming into Robotyne, and during the summer offensive, half of their equipment, including many German Leopard tanks, which are wonderful tanks, got destroyed in the landmines. So you cannot go and do farming when it's full of landmines. And then there are huge tracts of farmlands that are now directly affected by these conflicts, so they cannot farm there. So its farming production has gone down tremendously. Western part of Ukraine can still do farming. Also, its manpower has been completely depleted. So Ukraine's working age population between the age of 25 to 45 has been taking a lot of attrition, and many of them are already dead, many of them are maimed and injured, and many have escaped to some other country to escape from the war. So there is nobody to farm at this point for Ukraine.
Thank you so much for that update on Ukraine, Utsavji. And now let's take a look at what happened behind the Victoria Nuland leaving the Department of State. We know that she was expecting or hoping to succeed Wendy Sherman as the number 2, and that did not happen. Kurt Campbell got that spot. So the writing was sort of on the wall because she had a fairly impressive resume. Let's just take a look at what she had done. And we're going to show you the Maidan Revolution famous picture that she had been captured on. Can we have the slide, please? So this is a famous photo of Victoria Nuland during the 2014 Maidan revolt in Ukraine. Utsav, what went wrong for her?
So it depends on who you talk to in Washington, D.C. And as a person living in Washington, D.C., I get a chance to listen to a lot of people. So Victoria Nuland has been a part of Washington, D.C. setup for the last 25 years. That's a really long time. She has been in different roles in foreign policy positions for that amount of time. She has served under 4 or 5 different presidents from both parties. So you know that she's somebody who is immensely influential in Washington, D.C. And her own history is of East European Jewish background. So she has a lot of personal family history connected to that region. And many people would claim that the entire Maidan revolution in Ukraine, or the military coup, as the Russians would call it, or pro-Russians would call it, was engineered partly by her. It was her brainchild. Here you see this famous photograph, that both sides use actually, where she was in the Maidan in downtown Kyiv when the protesters were trying to remove the government that was pro-Russia. And she went around with a bag of bagels, distributing it to all the protesters, literally signaling top-level American support for the quote-unquote protesters there. And this photograph is very famous from 2014. So she's considered a key player in American foreign policy postures. She has been accused of many, including by Republicans in America. So I'm saying this because there are lots of Americans who accuse her of this. That she is a regime change expert. Her focus is usually to go and destabilize countries. And this is what even one of the main campaigns in America against her has been. And I think the way the Ukrainian conflict has evolved, and the outcomes that were expected probably out of it have not been achieved by the West. I think she's not very popular at this point of time in Washington, D.C., even amongst Democrats. And I think if you were to do an analysis of, what brand, there are names and individuals that cause poll numbers to go down. And if you were to ask an average American outside Washington, D.C. in America, that what do you think of Victoria Nuland? Many Americans who are not Democrats would have a very negative opinion about her name. It's just what has become popular in America now. So I think that was one of the reasons why she was let go. Another reason could have been that this whole financial package, the 61 billion financial package that was passed by Senate to help Ukraine continue with the war and also help Israel and Taiwan, wasn't taken up by the House because it's Republican majority, and the Speaker of the House refused to take it up. And there is a compromise funding bill that is now emerging in the House, and I feel that there could be a possibility that Victoria Nuland's resignation or retirement, whatever, however you want to present it, was connected to that bill, and maybe the Republicans will compromise if she's removed. That could be one of the positions. A third position is that she's probably eyeing to become the next chief of NATO. And this is not exactly a resignation or a retirement, but more of a take a break. You'll be back as a more global multilateral head of a multilateral agency which is pro-America, and that could be a possibility as well. So I don't rule out that all three things are a mix of all three truths are responsible for her retirement. Again, retirement in quotes. I don't hear you, Sree.
Yeah, thank you. Utsav, we have a few questions from our listeners, if you don't mind taking them.
Sure.
The first question is from Anand Doraiswamy. Good evening from Sydney. Is Utsav able to correlate the impact of this US funding of war on Australian economy since Australia rides on US policies?
So I would not. I don't have statistics to give you direct numbers, but my expectation would be that Australia has been part of the coalition that has been trying to help Ukraine out through military resources. So and Australia also has sent a few fighters who are kind of called mercenaries, but they are probably with the support of the Australian state going there. So in terms of its economic impact, I would say that it will lead to inflation in Australia, very similar to the way it led to inflation in US. But how much the money has impacted Australia's other productivities, I don't know. I do not assume that Australia has given a tremendous amount of resources. It is more focused on managing the Pacific Ocean region on behalf of the US alliance. It is more focused on managing China and Taiwan's situation on behalf of the US alliance, less so its direct involvement in Ukraine. So to give you a short answer, I don't know the details, but it would certainly have impacted inflation in Australia.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Anu Saini wants to know, Victoria was a smooth operator. So what next?
So as I said, Victoria is tremendously influential in Washington, DC, and she will continue to remain so. She's also at this point, if you were to ask Republicans, quite unpopular. So as I said, possibility of promotion to become the next chief of NATO, possibility of just retirement and fade away, join a think tank, write articles, give opinions, and make a lot of money.
That probably has already happened.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of money has already been made. Yeah.
Maverick Gujar wants to know, isn't Ukraine to Russia POK to India?
That's a very good interesting way to look at it. If you were a Russian, you would consider it that way. I don't know if people saw the interview between Putin and Tucker Carlson, but Putin literally went into a 1,000-year history lesson to justify the fact that Ukraine is essentially outlying parts of Russia historically, and has always been that way. And Ukrainians are mostly Russians, except for the complete western part of Ukraine where there is ethnic Polish and ethnic Romanians. So yeah, for Russians, Ukraine is like POK is to India. But if you were to talk to people in Ukraine, and this is not something that has happened in the last 10 or 15 years, but this has been going on at least for the last 150 years, with the help of the West, from the Crimean War and around that time when the entire world was fighting like it is now. Many Ukrainians consider themselves as more purer racially. There is a stream of very powerful ideological thinking in Ukraine that considers them to be the real Russians or the Kievan Rus, and the Russians to be impure Russians because they were all half Mongols and half something else. So the Ukrainians think of themselves to be special and different from Russia. Some of them do.
Yeah. Next question from GK. What is the future of Vivek Ramaswamy?
So Vivek Ramaswamy, I don't know. I am not in touch with him, even though he was a spokesperson. He was a speaker at our first fundraiser for Hindu Action last year. But I think he is in a very good place because he's very young. and he has proved his mettle in the primaries as an amazing speaker, as a very good thinker. Most people may not agree with him who are in urban areas. Many Indians, Hindu Americans, don't agree with him, but he has made himself quite positive in the public eye with his ability to argue. So what will happen to him next? The most ambitious position he will get to in the next couple of months probably could be a VP candidacy. Not sure. It doesn't work out demographically for Trump to have him as a VP candidate. He would rather prefer somebody who is a African American or a woman, because that's how identity politics works in America. But he's certainly, I'm assured that he certainly will be given a position if Trump comes back to power in November, and that would be a high cabinet position.
Thank you so much, Utsav. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Utsav will be back a couple of weeks from now, most likely on Wednesdays. And thank you once again, Utsav. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you.